Tell me if this sounds familiar. Do you get excited about producing music only to get bogged down along the way? It's a lot harder than you expected. You never seem to make much progress. I know how that feels. Today, I want to share 3 ingredients you need to skyrocket your progress in the studio. And for this to work, you need all 3, especially number 3. So here's the deal. If what you're doing isn't working, it can be helpful to just stop for a moment and take inventory of what's going on. Stop and evaluate what you're doing and the results you're getting. If you don't like the results you're getting, let's make some changes to what we're doing and then see if the results get better. That's called a course correction. I learned that the way like a torpedo works is it only makes a correction if it's off target. So if it's headed towards the target, it doesn't do anything. And if it gets off target, it just makes enough of a correction to get back on target. So maybe you might be really close to being on target. You just need one little nudge in the right direction to get you back on track. Or you may be way off target. In that case, let's get you back on target as soon as possible so music can become fun again and you can make lots of great sounding music. That's what today is all about. Let's evaluate where we are, and let's course correct. Cool. You with me? All right. Let's switch over to the whiteboard. First, I need some circles. There's 1. Let's make it a little bigger. There's 2. For those who ask, in case you're interested and you have an iPad, this is the Notability app, which is super fun. So this is what we call a Venn diagram. It's this idea of if there are 3 ingredients to give us what we want, this helps us kind of think through it in a very interesting way. So the goal is to have all 3 ingredients and to get yourself into this spot here, this little cute little shape in the middle. And if you can do that, you'll achieve the goal of this video, which is progress. Okay? So that's all of this is leading towards helping you get the progress you want to get in your studio. There we go. All right, so let's start with the first component. There are 3 major components. We're going to go through them each and talk through why they matter. The first is the easiest, and you already have this one in place, or you wouldn't be watching this video. These are kind of characteristics that you need for yourself. And the first is you are passionate. Whenever I start my speed mixing challenge, one of the first things we talk about on the very first day of the 5-day experience is, why do you make music? What's your reason? Because if you don't have a good reason, if you're not that passionate about it to begin with, nothing else is going to matter. Because passion is going to be the fuel that got you started and also sustains you as you go through it. So the cool thing about passion is it's the thing that got you started to begin with. But the downside is, I'm going to kind of go through each of these, the plus side and the downside. The downside is passion fades over time if there's no progress. So if we're not making progress on the thing we decided we want to give ourselves to, then the passion kind of fades. You may still love music, but the passion isn't there. And that if that's not there, it's not going to fuel everything that we do. So you may think, oh, Joe, who cares about passion? It's a big deal. It's a big deal. There's a reason I hold up this silly little goosebumps alert sign, because when music connects with me, my body responds to it by giving me goosebumps. And I think that's a big deal. I make music. One of the reasons I make music is so I can hear myself singing the truth back to myself on days when I don't believe it, because I'm a forgetful person. I also make music to connect with my buddies Tim and Joel. It's something we do together that I can't do with anyone else on the planet, not in the way we do it, and it's fun. And it's like one of my favorite things, and they're some of my closest friends. It's a beautiful, wonderful thing. I can't ever see myself not wanting to do it. However, if I wasn't good at it and wasn't making progress myself as a musician, as an artist, as a producer, the passion's going to go, and I'm going to stop doing it and go buy a boat or something. And my goal with this channel is to prevent you from buying a boat. Not really, but if you want a boat, get a boat. Make a record on a boat. That's interesting. But I don't want you to quit because you couldn't make the progress. That's why I'm here. Which leads us to our second piece, which we're going to do in blue. You got to be passionate. The next piece is you've got to be proficient. Proficient. If you're listening to the podcast, I've got 3 circles. The first is passionate. It overlaps with the other 2. The second is proficient. And then, by the way, all three words start with a P, so alliteration for the win. What does proficient mean? It just means you're good at it. So if the first step is I'm passionate about music and producing music, then the next obvious step is, well, I guess I better get good at it. So what does this involve? On the good side, this obviously involves some study. You got to learn how to do this stuff. When I first got into music production, I've shared this before, this was my microphone, this silly little plastic thing that connected to my parents' computer, and that was it. A piece of software and this and some headphones. Did not sound good, was not good. When I went off to school to learn audio, which is fascinating because I didn't know jack. I bought a microphone, a condenser microphone off of eBay. And it was like $89. I thought, holy smokes, I just spent my life savings. And I got the mic and I was like, cool, how do I plug this into my computer? And I went to, it was a store called Mars Music. And I asked the poor salesperson, hey, how do I plug this into my laptop? I need like an adapter to go from this to like the 1/8-inch plug on the side. Because that's all I ever knew was that like to record, microphones plug into the little 1/8-inch jack on the back of the computer. He was patient with me and was like, well, buddy, you're going to need a preamp or an audio interface or something that provides phantom power to the microphone. I didn't know what that was. And then that goes into the computer. So I had like a little mixer that plugged into a little Edirol, remember Edirol? USB interface using RCA cables, and that finally got the signal into the computer. It was a janky setup, but I made a bunch of music with it. Anyway, I needed to learn. That salesperson had to teach little Joe, hello, little buddy, you need phantom power, silly goose, which is the thing you plug your microphone in, you push the button, it provides power to the mic over the cable, which is a fascinating piece of technology, by the way. Anyway, I needed to learn, and there were lots of other things I needed to learn, like how to make the recording sound good. I didn't even know that mixing was a word, much less how to do it. So there's a lot of study. There's a lot of learning that you have to do. This is true for any endeavor. You want to learn guitar, you got to study what the chords are and then where your fingers go, and you got to practice and all those things. So on the plus side, of course, we need to study, we need to learn. That's great. On the downside of the proficiency circle is you can get stuck, right? You can just make it your life's work to study. I am going to learn everything there is to know, and yay, this is going to be wonderful, and I'm going to learn so much, and eventually I'll make some music, but right now I'm going to learn, and it's going to be great, and my head's going to be full of knowledge, and I can go on the forums and go on Reddit, and I can answer questions because I've learned the answers. Okay, fine, but that's not the end goal, and that's where a lot of people get stuck, like a whole lot of people. This is where they are. They are stuck. Now, you can be proficient at something and not be passionate about it, right? Maybe you've had a day job, maybe you have a job now that you're good at, but you don't love it. That's no fun. So ideally, we're combining these two. We're passionate about music, and we're going to make ourselves proficient at it. We're going to learn what we need to do to make great sounding music. And if you do that, it combines into this cute little purple color, and you become what I would call a prepper. Now, if you've never heard the term prepper, it's to describe people who like to prep for disasters. You can go, I saw it at Costco the other day. There's this big bucket of food. It's a bucket, like a 5-gallon bucket that can last, I think it said it lasts 25 years or something. And you're supposed to put it in your basement. And so when whatever goes down, you've got food. So the world shuts down, zombie apocalypse, I don't know, nuclear war, you've got a bucket of food that will last for 20 years that you can break open and eat. So anyway, if you are a prepper, great. I got nothing against you. It's a fascinating thing. I don't know much about it. I probably rely too much on my grocery store having food next time. I don't plant foods. Anyway, this is like the musical version of that. You're passionate, just like these people who prep, they're passionate about prepping, and you are preparing for the eventuality that you will make music, right? You are a prepper. You are regularly collecting information, tutorials, maybe even plugins and gear and equipment, and you are so excited. You're still passionate, right? This is the combination of passion and proficiency. You're passionate, you're excited, you're not making music, but you sure are in love with the process and you're having a ball. And that's great. And if that's you and you're happy there, you've won. Game over, shut down the video and just enjoy. However, I would imagine for most people, this is not where you want to be. the reason you got into music to begin with, the reason you started on this journey was to make and release music. That's my assumption. That's why I did it. I thought, wait, you're telling me I can record myself on my computer and make a CD and sell it around town? Yup. And that's what I did with the dumb old plastic microphone. I should play those songs for you one of these days. Anyway, but if all you're doing is preparing and getting ready, you aren't making progress because you're not making music. And I'm not here to judge. I'm here to just maybe hold up a mirror and say, is this you or is it not? If it is, you can make some changes today that move you towards what you really want to do. Because like we said, the goal here is progress, and you need 3 components for that. You don't need to just be passionate and to have studied a lot and learned how to do it. You also have to include this third piece, which is the third circle for those of us listening. And the third circle is prolific. This has been a theme for me the last few months because it's just an endlessly fascinating topic. What happens when you are passionate and proficient and prolific? What do I mean by prolific? Prolific means you make a bunch of stuff. Another word could be productive. You produce a lot of product. Product being a finished song. This is the missing component for most people. So what happens when you are prolific? What does that mean? Well, if you're just prolific without being passionate or proficient, then it just means you have a large quantity of work, but a low quality. Being passionate gets you in the door, gets you motivated. Being proficient makes you good, but being prolific is the missing piece. So there are some people perhaps who just are prolific without being proficient. So they're not good at it, and they're not even necessarily passionate about it. They just make a bunch of stuff. So it's going to be a whole pile of stuff that's not very good. That's being prolific without the other 2 pieces in place. What happens if let's say you're passionate and you're prolific? I think these Venn diagrams are incredibly, incredibly interesting. Let's say you are passionate and prolific. What does that get you? Well, it means you're unique. Your passion makes you very unique. The stuff you're making is unlike anything anyone else has ever made before because you're combining passion with, I'm going to make a bunch of stuff. But the problem is, if without a proficiency, it's just bad. It's just not good, right? Now, if you love it, great. But my guess is you're watching this video, you don't want to make bad stuff. Now, bad is subjective, right? Some people think, Nickelback is bad, while others think greatest band of all time. I'm in the middle. I think their stuff's kind of fun, but it's become like cool to bash Nickelback, which I've heard them say like has helped prolong their career because whether they're loved or hated, at least they're being talked about and people are buying tickets to their shows. Anyway, we don't want to just be unique but bad at what we do. So being passionate and prolific, not the best combination. On the other side, what happens if let's say you are prolific and you're proficient, but you're not really passionate about it? This could be, maybe you have a job you don't like. I remember, if you're familiar with Dave Ramsey, the radio money guy, I applied. His office is here in Nashville. I applied for a job like 10 years ago as an audio editor, and that would have been squarely in this category because all I would be doing all day is listening to the radio show and editing down episodes to replay on days when he was out of the office. And so I had to listen and do clean edits, but I also had to ditch any episodes or segments where he talked about, hey, we're going to be in Tampa this weekend. Those couldn't be used because it was going to be used for replays. So it had to be clean segments where he didn't mention any specific dates that we could replay when he's out of the office. So it felt live, if that makes sense. Anyway, that I really wanted that job because I just wanted a job in audio. No, this is more like 15 years ago. This is a long, long time ago. Like I had just started Home Studio Corner. Home Studio Corner was still a baby. Anyway, if you are proficient so I would have been very proficient at that job. I was good at editing, and I would have been prolific because I'm editing 8 hours a day, all day, every day for almost no money, I'm pretty sure. The quality of my work would have been fine, but the downside is it would be empty. So proficient and prolific without being passionate means I'm making good stuff, but it's not me. And there's not like this stamp of passion on top of it. This would also qualify for people who get good at songwriting and producing, and they're chasing after whatever the trend is in the market. I'm trying to make a song that sounds like this so that somebody will cut it. That's a whole world. My buddies over at Clay Mills, over at Songtown, and Marty Dotson, they talk about songwriting, and they are pro songwriters who are writing in order for artists to record their songs. So in some ways they have to, in a little bit, chase what's popular and what's working. But you can very quickly go down the path of like just straight imitation, and then you lose the best thing about you, which is you. I saw a post the other day. Someone said, I stopped trying to be like my heroes because I'll never be like them. And also the good news is they'll never be like me. I'm the only one who can be me. And so I can get better, right? I can focus and maintain my passion. I can get better, and then I can be prolific. And all of those combined give me what I would call my voice. And to me, finding your voice is really what we're all about. Now, I don't mean like singing voice, but I mean like who you are as a person and how you're going to make your stamp on the world musically. You need all three of these. So you need all three of these just to make progress, but to also find your voice and to become the artist you were meant to be. I can only be Joe Gilder. As much as I'd like to try to be a Jeff Buckley, I'm not going to be Jeff Buckley. He was fantastic. No one could ever be him. Also, no one could ever be me. And by the way, this is true about more than just music. What do you do for your job? What do you do for a living? I do this for a living, which is fun. I get to make music, but I also get to make content and help people make music. That's what I do. And there's so many people I could follow and try to imitate and mimic. And there are things I can learn from other people, like other people doing great work, and say, oh, that's cool that they're doing that. How can I do a version of that and make it my own? But I'm constantly not battling, but top of mind is this idea of, how do I help people? How do I attract an audience? How do I help them? But also, how do I do it in a way that's still true to me versus trying to chase the trends and trying to chase the views and trying to all of that stuff. I'm not demonizing that stuff. That stuff is helpful and good as far as like, if no one ever watches what I do, then I don't really get to help anybody, and also don't get to grow my business. So there's an element there that I need to be proficient and good at this, but I have to find that overlap. That's what this middle section is about. Where is the overlap between where I'm passionate, where I'm proficient, and where I can be prolific? So go watch my first video on this channel if you want to. I'm young. I still have hair. I'm awkward. I'm timid. It's just not very good. It's in like 340p. There's nothing good about it. You might say there's good information, and maybe I had some general talent in terms of explaining things, but it took me a whole long time to get a whole lot of being prolific to get to where I'm good at what I do, and I can sit down and shoot these videos and do them in a way that I think is connecting with people. So, passion, I can't help you with that, although I can't help you with passion. You're either passionate or you're not to start. But where I can really help you is in the proficiency piece, which can help you be prolific. My whole Home Studio Corner exists to help you be proficient at making music, which also, by the way, helps you be prolific. Because if I'm better at making the music, I'm going to make more music because I can make it faster because I've developed the skills to be able to do this with efficiency, which is why I want to invite you to come to my speed mixing challenge. If you haven't heard me talk about this, this is a 5-day coaching experience where I will coach you in my process for mixing. Just go to speedmixingchallenge.com. The tickets are very affordable. It's a 5-day experience where we will meet for an hour or two each day, and I will personally live coach you through my 5-part mixing process. You'll get a track to mix. You will very well have a great sounding mix by the end of the week. If that feels impossible to you, you need to come, because my approach isn't so much about speed. It's about being efficient. It's about being proficient. It's about being good at what you do. If you get good at something, you can do it quickly, which means you can make a lot more music and make a lot better music, all in less time than you ever thought possible. So come to the Speed Mixing Challenge. I promise you it'll be worth it. If you can't make the live sessions, they will be recorded, so there's no reason not to grab a ticket to the very next one. Go to speedmixingchallenge.com. You can see when the next one is happening. You can buy your ticket, get the Premier Pass ticket. Then you and I can hang out in a small group and do Q&A every day before the main session, which is incredibly valuable. You can get specific answers to your questions, where you're stuck, where you're frustrated. Let me help you. Would love to do it. Would love to have you be a part of it. Go check it out, speedmixingchallenge.com. Okay, what happens if you put these things in place? What happens if you become passionate, proficient, and prolific? You'll start loving music again. Maybe you've lost a little bit of that spark. Maybe the passion has faded over time because you're not making much progress. That makes sense. Let's fix that. Let's focus on being passionate, being prolific, and being proficient. You can't do it without all three. You got to make a bunch of music to get good at making music. You got to learn some stuff too, but the prolific piece is probably the most important piece of the pie. And if you do, I've said a lot of P's today. And if you do that, you'll start loving music again, and you'll start releasing stuff that both makes you proud and impresses your friends and your family and your audience, because they'll say, wait, you made that? You made that at home? Holy smokes, right? That's the dream. That's what happens when you do this. Hope this was helpful for you. Let me know in the comments which of these what connected with you today. What was an aha moment for you? What was kind of a shift in your thinking? What are you going to do moving forward based on watching this video? I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.